Hello, everyone. Davis here. I'm going to talk to you about what it means to be powerless. Or more specifically, I'm going to use a few authors to illustrate my points because they'll do it more eloquently than I can. So I'm happily turning pages. I'm reading as any other reader does, when suddenly I notice that authors are all making the same points, or rather, they have the same subtext. Every author comes into it and they're lost in some ways. They're dealing with a theme of transience. Well, what do I mean by this? Well, we take a look at modern society, and we see that in general, we're moving forward. We want to move forward towards industry. We want to move towards modern society. And very few times do we want to roll back the clock and do things an old way. We don't want the obsolete. So, at that intersection between this desire for modern society and identity, culture, purpose, poverty, and so on, we're often disoriented. We take a look around and we see that nothing is as we remembered it because A, we moved, or B, we were forced to move. So today I'm going to discuss what happens there. I'm going to ask some questions. Can people afford to be in a constant state of motion? Well, contemporarily, we're dealing with this at the border. There's no shortage of transients here. AP News reports March 30th, 2021. Over 4,000 migrants, many kids, crowded into Texas facility. The article goes on to describe the living conditions there. Not great, not the worst either, but still, hundreds crossing the borders to great lengths to come here. Why is that? Well, if we're asking the sociological question, then usually we're going to look at the violence, we're going to look at the poverty. Maybe we're going to look at the drug war, which has been raging through Central and South America for the last few decades. But still, in spite of those obstacles, in spite of the red tape, the infrastructure, they come anyways. We have to realize that transience is not a new thing. We're always told that we're a country of immigrants and that people come, people go. But we have to ask ourselves, where have we seen this before? Well, we'll go back to the Wild West. We'll rewind 150 years or so, and we'll see that populations are generally in a flux. Borders are less political realities, more suggestions, and no fewer suggestions than cowboys. These guys take no crap. And I guess you could say, in this sense, Jack London is a proper vaquero. The vaquero of the rail because he's a hobo, he's a scam artist, and he is best defined by this theme of transience. So, like the immigrants of today, London is just a man. He's generally powerless compared to the strength of the United States government. But at the same time, he accepts the instability of his livelihood as a given. He capitulates to the American government in his own way, where the migrants of today are eager to come to yield the economic benefits. Jack wants nothing to do with the government. He's moving city from city. When the government comes in, London is moving out. On the other side of the coin, we have people that their transience is compelled. They're forced to move. We rewind a few decades before the golden era of the Wild West, and we're talking about the Trail of Tears. We're talking about overwhelming movement of Native Americans being pushed further west into Oklahoma and other territories, I suppose. We're going to talk about Zikala Saw, who has a set of competing interests, that of staying true to her mother, her tribe, the traditions of the Dakota, and education, desire to move on with the times. See, by the time her mother concedes, decides to let her go, she has a breakthrough. She has a realization that she doesn't want this to some degree. Quote, I was in the hands of strangers, no longer free to be myself. Tears trickled down my cheeks. Now that first step parting me from my mother was taken. So, where have we seen this before? Well, today, I guess you could compare this to anchor babies. These children coming over hoping to plant themselves and then hoping that they can get asylum, so on and so forth, have their people come with them. This desire to assimilate yourself with a culture that guarantees a higher level of success while letting go of your past. So moving on, we've got Olson, modern writer describing the instability of textile work. Here we have this instance where every element of life is conspiring to move like a dizzying carousel. Nothing stays the same. Wages are collapsing, bones are breaking. In general, this work is killing you, and you're not getting paid a whole lot to do it. In fact, nothing stays the same to the degree that by the week, the amount of money that people get paid is decreasing. So why? Why would they stay? Well, like the immigrants of today, we have to infer that in general, the conditions they lived in before were enough to take that 70 cents as a wage. And we have to think that that still happens to this day. This class of undocumented immigrants that are taking jobs that are below the minimum wage, this agriculture work generally, but it's not sustainable. We have to think that none of this can last, right? Well, what can we conclude from all this movement? I've written it down, so I'm just going to read it because I don't think I could, come up with better things to say on my own. The common lessons of America's greatest writers teach us we can never settle our roots too deeply. The confluence of identity, poverty, and politics shift too readily for any sense of real permanence. Where laws are established, men and women like London will dance to the rhythm of pariahs. Where nation states are consolidated, indigenous peoples cry as the Leviathan displaces them. Heart-wrenching thrums of machinery push workers into further depths. And it shows that the present is always passing, yielding. American literature shows that as time moves, so too will people. Transience and tragedy can go hand in hand, but perhaps an optimist will imagine something else altogether. Nothing lasts forever. Pain is ephemeral. So, thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you next time.